Can you believe that we have never had a Blast villain support like this until right now? Bugged or not, Enchantress is an amazing support, not only for what she does for supervillains, but also what she does for Blast types. And her value there is already more than enough to justify getting the uniform if you're into these game modes and you're into pushing scores in specifically ABX and a little bit of ABL. So that's basically the only thing that necessarily needs to be said about the characters is that she gives you these buffs to all supervillain allies on a team, so she becomes an amazing support character. All attack by 20%, which is like a pseudo leadership, and then 40% increased damage to boss types, and we've seen how powerful that can be with characters like Sif becoming very meta supports with that ability alone. In addition to that, she still gives all allies mind resist and mind damage, so if in the future or now you're playing with characters that deal mind damage, not only does it apply to herself, so she's also self-buffing with all of these supports, but it adds an extra layer of damage there. Currently, this doesn't apply to the majority of content because the majority of content just doesn't have good mind damage characters, but that could change at any point. You know, if you have Rachel Summers getting a uniform turns her into a villain, you have new Phoenix Force users coming out getting turned into villains, using mind damage, MODOK, you know, Mr. Sinister. There are quite a few options at the end of the day. You know, Emma Frost could make a comeback, etc. So you do have that for you. But then you also have the leadership, increasing all debuff effects by 40%. And for those of you that don't know what that does, it basically increases debuffs, which are the brown skills. I know it's kind of a shitty color, but that 3% minus of mind resistance down that goes up to 60, both of those numbers get increased by 40%. Now, timesing 3% by 40% doesn't really give you all that much, but it does increase it by, let's take a look here, 1.4. It does increase that -3 to -4.2, but that's not really the interesting part because it increases all debuff effects, which means that 60%, which is a much bigger number, then gets multiplied by 1.4, and now it's 84. And this was the old way before Pierce that we were able to shred bosses by stacking a ton of all defense down, up to or over 100%, and stacking a whole bunch of, in the case of elemental characters, elemental resistance down. Now, she also has, as you can see here, she also has all defense down. So you can get -84, up to -84 all defense and mind resist down, which makes it a very, very potent combo. Unfortunately, someone like Deadpool doesn't have a villain uniform, but if he did, the synergy would be off the charts. But let me show you guys here another chart with even more synergies. This is the ABX ABL meta. This hasn't been updated recently, but we can update a little bit of it right now. For example, Blast villain. This is male or female, doesn't matter. Here you can have here you should actually be using Enchantress as a support. She replaces, you know, Mephisto or Red Skull or Mr. Sinister, and basically supercharges this team. Absolutely supercharges this team. Because Magneto was scoring very high in this game mode, although it's a seasonal uniform, I know. He was scoring very high with no support, with essentially zero support. Now having Enchantress is humongous and just absolutely catapults his damage. So you're like, okay, Alex, I can use Enchantress for 1 day of ABX. I don't think I'm going to spend 1,000 crystals for 1 day of ABX. Okay, what about 2 days of ABX? What about villain female? Now, I know there's already a lot of villain female supports like Proxima, like Black Cat, etc., especially with the artifact, but let's be clear here. This is a seasonal uniform with an artifact required, and this is a native tier 2 character. That could be very, very expensive. So you probably could get as much, if not more, mileage out of actually using Enchantress over Proxima, believe it or not. So that's already 2 days of ABX. If that wasn't enough, you can also use Enchantress. If you scroll over here, you can use her in the Alien Villain Day. Now, again, I haven't updated this in a while, so it's not Loki anymore. Right now, it's actually Thanos, and it's not this old Thanos. It's the new Thanos uniform. But you can actually pair Thanos because he has a self-buffing lead with both Proxima and now, you guessed it, Enchantress. Yes, so she has a ton of value now, being able to support so much content, and it really just goes to show you that I don't know how to use this thing because I'm putting these I'm putting these borders everywhere except where they need to be. And now this is gone here, so I gotta, okay, all right, there we go, we got it. Oh, and I deleted the one over there. That's fantastic. So yeah, Basically, insane mega value here. And we haven't even got to using her as a character. So yeah, sucks that it's a seasonal uniform for Thanos, absolutely. But on the flip side, you do have an insane new support who is not seasonal and who's not paywall in Enchantress. So this alone really justifies her value. I was gonna start the video by talking about and showcasing her damage and how proc friendly she is. But I think the reality is if people are going to buy her, they're primarily buying her for the support, and her support passive is insane. And the nice thing is, unlike a lot of the other characters recently that have gotten support buffs that don't really apply in a lot of content, like Squirrel Girl and Thanos don't synergize, Spider-Woman being a blast type doesn't synergize with all of the speed heroes, right? Enchantress does, right? Because you're either going to have a situation where it's a supervillain tag, it's a supervillain restriction in World Boss Legend, in which, of course, she can obviously be there for that. If it's just something as simple as supervillain, like you have on 39 of Null. But then you also have something like Blast Villain, which is a little bit higher up for Mephisto here at 55. And you can or sorry, that's actually Blast Male. That's actually villain male. You can't use Enchantress there. My bad. You have Blast here, where you can use villains or heroes. And you also have villains. So, like, anytime there's a villain stage, anytime there's a blast stage, or anytime there's a blast villain stage, or I don't think there's female villain tags yet, but or females, right? You have so much value there. And then, like, again, I could showcase her damage, but take a look at the meta right now, right? Who are the best characters in the meta for the majority of PvE content, right? So we talked about Thanos already. Enchantress buffs him because he's a villain. Who else is, like, amazing in PvE if you give them a PvE build? Oh, Jean Grey is, like, insane for PvE content. Guess what? Female and villain. Oh, Enchantress buffs her. Doesn't buff her damage because, unfortunately, it's fire, not mind, but maybe one day. Well, who else is really meta right now? Namor's really meta. Huh, another villain for Enchantress to buff. Magneto's really meta. Huh, another villain for Enchantress to buff. Wow, Black Bolt is really meta. That's another villain for Enchantress to buff. So the meta is actually full of villains right now. Hey, is there another villain that Enchantress could buff? Oh yeah, Dr. Octopus is in the meta too. So lots of villains for her to buff, and that's only scratching the surface of what she can do because she's also a playable character. So we got this crit rate, mind damage, 140 proc. It's a low proc, but it does have the mind damage, which is very, very nice. The rest of the build is pretty straightforward and pedestrian. We have a stage 12 Power of Angry Hulk. So I know I waited 8 minutes into the video to show you guys gameplay, but the gameplay is, although not very impressive damage-wise, super easy to pull off. It's just a very simple 3 slight delay cancel, 4 slight delay cancel, 5 proc. It's very, very easy. It's pretty satisfying visually, and it does an impressive amount of damage. I was trying to... Okay, we're trying to use the tier 3 to give us stun immunity and then proc. That's okay. She has short cooldowns, so you don't have to worry about, anything. Like, really, they designed her to be stupidly easy to play. Now, is she unfortunately high damage, as you can see here with triple support? No, not really. Her damage is not too crazy. It's not bad, certainly. For a 140 proc obelisk, this is not bad at all. But it also is not going to compete. Like, there's not a lot of female blast villains to compete with. On the other hand, there's just not a lot of content where she's going to need to be used at a very, very high level. But again, I think the support value alone makes her insanely good. On top of that, you can actually use her as a standalone character, which, hey, is pretty good too. We're going to proc on 6 here just to take advantage of the iframe ignore, but in general, you don't want to proc on 6. You want to proc on 5. You want to proc on that little zippy. Although, hey, they don't want me to proc on 5 either. That was, like, super duper delayed. You got to be careful. The only weakness, really, to Enchantress is the defenses. Very low defenses. Gets obliterated with just a little bit of damage taken. So probably going to struggle against someone like Mephisto more so than other bosses. Well, any boss with, like, lots of chip damage is going to struggle against them. But she does have a heal in addition to her her charm-based heal. So you don't have to stress about that too much because you do get the heal off regardless. With her old uniform, she only had healing on the charm, and the charm, of course, doesn't apply to world bosses. So it just wouldn't apply, and you'd be like, cool, man. Her, her only heal function just not working because the devs are dumb. So They fixed that this time around. We're just going to go ahead and push him right to the next phase. Dragon phase. Not sure we're going to have enough time to really queue up. No. She has a bit of a wind-up to her skills. It does make her very proc-friendly because it's 3 with a slight delay, cancel 4 with a slight delay, cancel 5. But it also means that she doesn't have burst damage, right? It's kind of difficult to find a character who has... And it's difficult to sort of balance characters around having high burst damage as well as having proc friendliness, right? Because high burst damage means there's a lot of damage right at the beginning, and unless the skills are fully cancelable, they won't be proc friendly. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this here. You can see she takes a lot of damage. I'm already below half, and if I didn't escape, I easily would have died. So yeah, defense is really not her thing. Tanking is not her thing. Not really surprised, if you ask me. But it's also something worth noting because of how difficult it can be at higher levels. So 2 minutes left on stage 39 is pretty solid in my opinion with a 140 proc obelisk. I'm almost definitely going to end up giving her an insight, so I don't see the need to show you guys how much better she's going to get. But the nice thing is, being proc friendly, but also being elemental, you have so many options. So honestly, if they don't buff and if they don't, I guess, fix Odin and Angela and Malekith, Enchantress is going to be the standout of this update by far, because you have an amazing support, you have a solid leadership, and then you have a character who you can also actually use. You can see here she has all 3 tags. You can actually use her as a damage dealer, and not only can you use her as a damage dealer, she's super easy to play as a damage dealer, and you can use her with almost any build, right? Of course, you can go Insight and make her a support build, but you could go with a Mighty, you could go with an Energy, you could go with a Judgment, right? Because it's elemental, or you could even go with a Mighty Destruction. She can do all of those things because of how flexible the character is with being elemental damage, with being proc friendly, and all that good stuff there. So yeah, really solid character. I think this is one of the better reworks we've seen, certainly from this update, but also from this year. And it's also good to have new supports in categories where we didn't have them before. Like, we've literally never had a blast villain support like this until right now. So that alone makes her, in my opinion, a must-buy, or at least a strong consideration. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of Enchantress. Thank you so much for watching. Smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.